Good evening and welcome to the Drive at 5 on the IntellectualRadio.com/iHeart radio station. I'm your host, Roman, and we have a great show planned for you today. First, the forecast from our IntellectualRadio.com Weather Center. Today, cloudy with a 50% chance of light showers early. Temps falling throughout the day, high in the upper 40s tonight. Cloudy, lows mid-40s. Tomorrow, cloudy with a chance of showers and thunderstorms in the morning, continuing throughout the afternoon with a high of 60 degrees. Tomorrow night, partly cloudy. Showers and thunderstorms in the evening, low in the mid-40s. The rest of the week forecast looks like this. Wednesday, mostly sunny in the morning, then becoming partly cloudy, high in the upper 50s. Thursday, partly cloudy with a 20% chance of light rain, high in the lower 50s. And on Friday, partly cloudy, high in the mid-40s. The Drive at 5 is part of the Monday Night Mogul with Straight No Chaser with Rhea Ray Harris at 6 p.m. Setting it off with John Stennis at 7 p.m. Maze Says with Maze Jackson at 8 p.m. Keeping It Real Estate with Harold Arnold at 3 p.m. One Sister to Another with Angela Johnson now has a new date and time, Sundays at 10 a.m. Please check her out. And the Monday Night Mingle radio show is back on the air on Monday nights beginning March 28 at 7 p.m. The Monday Night Mingle is sponsored by Pillar Insurance, anywhere in there. I like that. The Drive at 5 is also part of the fabulous 5 at 5, only on IntellectualRadio.com/iHeart radio station. Today, my guest is a candidate for Commissioner, Metropolitan Water Reclamation District of Greater Chicagoland area. Please give a Drive at 5 welcome to Andrew So. Welcome to the Drive, sir.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Please give IntellectualRadio.com/iHeart radio station your background.
Well, my background's educational background's a mechanical engineer. Graduated from the Illinois Institute of Technology. Worked at the Department of Water Management for the city of Chicago, and then I worked for a company called Tang and Associates, which got bought out by EXP Global, which is a large engineering construction company here in Chicago, and then worked for the Metropolitan Water Reclamation of Greater Chicago as an engineer there, and now I'm running for office as commissioner.
What is your platform and why? A lot of people want to know. Different politicians come on,
right,
and they basically say, I'm running for this and that and the other. What is your platform and why you choose that platform?
My platform is infrastructure, plain and simple. It's just modernizing our old, 100-year-old aging infrastructure, our water infrastructure, our sewer infrastructure, and our stormwater infrastructure. I know where we're located right now, out here in the west side of Chicago and Cook County, that there is a ton of flooding going on anytime it rains over an inch. And I've been out here, Bellwood, Maywood, when an inch of rain all of a sudden turns an entire street into a swimming pool, and I've seen it with my own eyes, and it's insanity. You have basements flooding like you wouldn't believe. And that's what causes a lot of home value and home properties to decline, because nobody wants to live in an area where it consistently floods every single time it rains. It happens in the south side of Chicago as well. And it goes back to poor infrastructure and poor leadership. We have people in office who have been in office more than I've been alive, and they haven't done anything. They haven't replaced the infrastructure. When I say infrastructure, I mean piping. So they haven't replaced the sewer piping. They haven't replaced the water piping. And that's where we come into the lead situation. Flint was a wake-up call for every city in the United States to start looking and investing and modernizing their sewer and water infrastructure. Out here, we have a lot of wood piping. We have a lot of clay piping. We have a lot of brick piping. And we have a lot of lead piping. So it's definitely a major issue that needs to be solved, and somebody needs to take a look at it and get it done.
A lot of people say, that's good talk. How are you going to fix it? Okay, let's say tomorrow, you win by a landslide.
Yeah.
Day one, how are you going to fix the problem?
Well, so I got to give you some clarity. The Water Reclamation District is the only government entity in the state of Illinois that actually has money. The city of Chicago is broke. Cook County is broke. The state of Illinois is broke. But the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District is the only government entity that actually has money.
Why is that?
Well, it's because we are a separate entity. So we are separate from Cook County. We are separate from the city of Chicago. We are separate from the state of Illinois. And we collect our taxes through property taxes. So for us, we've never had to actually increase taxes because it's done so organically through inflation. The home value, let's say, let's say of your parents' home back, let's say in 1920s was a certain amount. Well, it's increased since then to whatever the value is right now. And we take a percentage of that. It's a very small percentage. So normally what you see today's taxes is probably $100 off, on your property tax for the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District. And for most people, it's kind of neglected because it's on the bottom, and $100 doesn't hurt as many people comparatively to what the schools are charging, right? The schools are charging thousands of dollars. $100 doesn't make a big difference. But if you pool $100 and you multiply that by 5 million households, that's a good chunk of change.
You mentioned Flint, Michigan. A lot of people are talking about the water supply in Flint, Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
However, here in Chicago, which you address, Chicago Tribune did a study, and it strongly stressed Chicago water supply has led in it, particularly in disadvantaged areas in Chicago, like the West Side, like you mentioned,
Yep.
and the South Side. We are hours away from the election.
Yep.
Why there is no big uproar about Chicago water supply in disadvantaged areas in Chicago?
Why there isn't an uproar is beyond me. There should be an uproar, and even better, even increased uproar, just like with the state's attorney's race, with Laquan McDonald and what's going on with Anita Alvarez and Kim Foxx. There should be a bigger uproar. There isn't. And at the end of the day, I don't know why. I can't really explain it. If my water was being poisoned and it was feeding my family, and my family needs to bathe in it, wash their dishes with it, drink it, so on and so forth, then I would be furious. As to why it's not going on, I don't know. It goes back to education and being informed. And just the people are not informed. They're informed about various things that have nothing to do with their lives. And it's a major issue. But in my case, my goal is to inform, but not only to inform, but to just get rid of it. We need to get rid of it. So day one, when you say, what am I going to do? Day one, I'm going to come out here to the West Side, and I'm going to have a crew of people, and we're just going to start digging. And we're going to start replacing a lot of the old brick, a lot of old wood, a lot of old lead piping that's out in the streets right now. The problem is it's out of sight, so it's out of mind. People don't think about it. But if I can give you some idea of how old this piping is, the last time it saw daylight was when Abraham Lincoln was alive. This is when slavery was still going on in this country. Was the last time when these pipes saw daylight. So there's a million miles of pipe all over Chicago and Cook County that need to be replaced, and we got to do it today. We should have done it 30 years ago, but our politicians are, and that's why Trump is doing such a good job. Is our politicians are stupid. They are just blind, and they only care about themselves and their own well-being, and they don't care about you or me or the people on the streets, the people that are getting them elected.
You mentioned day one, you're going to start digging.
Yep.
So tomorrow, you're elected. You're the winner.
Yep.
You're going to start digging.
We're going to start digging.
There's so much red tape that's out there that you have to get permission to dig here. You got to get permission to dig there. What is so different about the water department? Do you have to get permission? Or you can say, I'm the water department, damn it. I can dig whatever I want to dig.
It's a little bit of both. So, for us being a separate entity, we to the city council. We don't answer to Cook County President Tony Preckwinkle. We don't answer to any of the Cook County commissioners, and we don't answer to the governor or the state representatives in the state senate. We are our own entity, and we can do however as we please. But at the same time, we don't want to be a bad neighbor. We will inform. So we will let the aldermen know. We will let the state representatives know. We will let the state senators know that, hey, we're going to be digging in this area, and we're going to be replacing old piping. I mean, that's the best we could do. But, for the way I operate is I will inform and let you know. If you don't like it, or you have some type of ill will or ill intentions, you know what I mean, the politics, I don't play that. I just believe that it should be done quickly, done for the people, and it should be reasonable. There's no reason why we should be playing games with people's money. This is taxpayer money at the end of the day, right? This is several billions of dollars that the Water Reclamation District has that it can use to appropriate, to budget, and then to use for construction purposes and engineering purposes and putting people to work. There should be no games in that. And there's a lot of gamesmanship. That's what I've seen.
A lot of people would say, okay, I buy that argument. However, Mayor Rahm Emanuel just put a water monitoring device in my home. I didn't ask for it, but now I'm getting double taxed for it. What is going to be so different? It goes with the rate of inflation. It's total. How come the city can put a water system monitoring device to monitor the water usage, and you get paid per usage instead of an estimate or a guesstimate, or it goes by inflation, what you said earlier?
Right. So the city of Chicago, what they've done is that, for a lot of the homes in the city, a lot of the older homes, there has been no water meter, just because of the old aging infrastructure. So they kind of estimate, as you said, how much water you're actually using, which could be little or more, but they're just estimating because they're knowing. So they proposed putting water meters to find out exactly how much water a certain person is using. Now, here's the issue and here's the problem. The water meters, a lot of the water meters they're putting in, they're faulty. So you'll see people getting charged double or triple their water usage based on the meter, but the meter is all screwed up and it's all messed up. You know what I'm saying? So it goes back to gamesmanship. Whoever installed these water meters, they put bad meters in. Now they're going to go back and they're going to put new meters in. So that's double charging, right? They get more money from the city of Chicago for not only installing the first meter, which was bad, but they're coming back to install another meter. So it's the political gamesmanship. It's the the money that gets stuffed in an envelope. All the things that we imagine a bad politician is doing. This is probably what's going on.
Will they get any tax credit?
They should,
but it's not happening.
It's not happening.
Why?
Well, so let me give you some leeway here. The Water Reclamation District is separate from the city of Chicago. So I put out a proposal for the Water Reclamation District to merge and to consolidate the city of Chicago Department of Water Management for $5 billion. What this does, it allows the Water Reclamation District to take over purification, transmission, and then the water meters for the entire city of Chicago and Cook County. Because what most people don't know is that the city of Chicago supplies water county plus all the other county and Cook County. It is the largest water purification entity in the world. They service well over 15 million people, the city of Chicago. So what I propose is a $5 billion plan. It would give the city $5 billion. They can use that money right away to pay for city pensions. So firefighters, city workers, they all get their pensions paid for. Plus, we give them a annuity. So we give them a $500 million annuity every year, $500 million, and they can use that for whatever services they were paying for. It's a good idea. It's a great idea. I've got it vetted with a lot of lawyers, a lot of people that do bonds, a lot of people that know the city municipal law, and it's all checks out. So as soon as I get in, that's the first thing I'm going to be working on with the city council and the mayor, which is merging those two entities, consolidating government, providing the city with capital, $5 billion of capital, plus a $500 million annuity, all for taking charge of the city's water service. So when it comes back to your water meter, I'm an engineer. I'm not a politician. My goal is to make sure that things are working and things are working right the first time. I don't want to do this forever. I want to serve my country. I want to serve my city. I want to serve my state. And I want to do a good job, make a difference.
How would you make a difference?
Well, just replacing a lot of the old water infrastructure and sewer infrastructure.
I get that.
Yeah.
But this is, I remember back during the 90s, Mayor Daley spent over close to $1 billion, maybe even more, because during the early 90s, we had some severe rain, and it was like probably, I would say 3, 4, 5 inches, and it flooded the city downtown area. You remember that?
Yeah.
So he had this plan to build a big sewer system in the downtown area that will capture a lot of rainwater. It's like you can easily walk through it, but no one's not talking about that. And it's supposed to help city suburban areas because whatever water, they can dump it in there.
Oh, you're talking about the deep tunnel?
You're right, the deep tunnel.
The deep tunnel project. So let me just kind of inform you and your listeners what the deep tunnel really is. Deep tunnel is a $4 billion boondoggle.
Well, explain that.
Yeah, so let me explain that. So in the 1970s, roughly, there was a man named Congressman Rostenkowski, a very powerful congressman here in Illinois. He was chairman of Ways and Means, and he appropriated money for the city of Chicago and Cook County to receive funding every year for the deep tunnel and reservoir project. Now, the deep tunnel is this giant hole in the ground. It's a tunnel, and it feeds into a couple of reservoirs. Now, that project is still not finished. We still have another 15 years to go.
Why?
At the end of the day, it's political gamesmanship, the politics,
I mean, I'm sorry to cut you off, but
yeah,
you have to understand that it was this big whoop that was made in the 90s. We got to invest in this project.
yeah,
and we haven't heard anything about it. It's supposed to
alleviate flooding.
Right, alleviate flooding.
It's not going to do that. It's not going to do that. So let me kind of give you some numbers. 1 inch of rain in Cook County is about 15 billion gallons of water. 1 inch of rain. Our facilities, our wastewater treatment facilities as a whole, now we have 7 as a whole all over Chicago and Cook County. We also have the largest one in Stickney, the largest wastewater treatment plant in Stickney, Illinois. All in all, they can only handle up to 6 billion gallons of water. So you have roughly 9 billion gallons of water that either go into the river, ends up going into the lake, or ends up going into your basement or your backyard or your front yard, depending on where you live. That's flooding water. That's flooded water. Now, what the deep tunnel is supposed to do is supposed to take that 9 billion gallons of water, and instead of it going into your basement or your back, and it's supposed to solve a lot of this flooding issue. Here's the problem. It goes back to our local infrastructure, the pipes that are out there that I was talking about, the wood pipes, the brick pipe, the lead pipe, all that pipe. It's too small. Because remember, this was put in at a time when Abraham Lincoln was alive, and the population of Cook County was barely a million people. Right now we have almost 10 million people living in Cook County, and the sizes of homes are larger. We have condominiums, we have apartments, we have skyscrapers. Those all feed into our sewer systems, and those sewer systems feed into the deep tunnel. So it's kind of like a bottleneck. You have a straw leading into a straw leading into a giant bottle. But on the top, you have a bucket of water coming down. Those straws can only pick up so much water. So the goal at the end of the day is even if this deep tunnel is completed, and this will be completed in 15 years from now, so 2030 is when it's going to be completed. Even when after it's completed, it won't solve a thing. What needs to be done is you need to start replacing a lot of the old sewer and water piping all throughout the county. All throughout the county needs to be done.
So in essence, you're saying we're spending billions of dollars on the deep tunnel project for nothing.
Exactly. Just to sum it up, it's money down the drain. It's nowhere.
Michigan again, many African Americans are using bottled water to wash up their bodies in Flint, Michigan currently.
Yeah.
Some have not even taken a shower or a bath in 6 months. People are worried. Here in Chicago, does Chicago have a water disaster plan?
If it happens here in Chicago, we are screwed. We do not have a water disaster plan.
Why is that?
People just don't have plans for tragedies. Like 9/11 was a great example. September 11th, when the terrorists attacked the Twin Towers, you had firefighters, you had police officers, you had paramedics, you had FBI, CIA. Nobody was working together. Their equipment, the fire equipment, the police equipment, the radios, they could only go up a certain height. After that, it just stops. It just dead drops. So you had people communicating on the ground that couldn't communicate with the people inside those buildings. I mean, these are all the things that happens during a tragedy. Nobody thinks about it. Nobody comes up with a plan. Here in Chicago, same problem. If, let's say, for example, our water supply was poisoned, we don't have a plan.
Will you have a plan?
I will have a plan. I will work with Homeland Security. I will work with the FBI and the CIA and make sure that we have a plan. Now, this goes back to the deep tunnel. That's a possibility where we can actually use the deep tunnel for this purpose, having an emergency plan if our water should be contaminated or poisoned. It's it's a giant tunnel right now, and it can be used to divert that bad poisonous water until we fix the problem and have good clean water ready for citizens.
Right now, you have so many people in Flint, Michigan without water. And you brought an example of that. Could you hold it up for us? In comparison to the dirty water as you see right here, this is an actual what comes out of the faucet in Flint, Michigan, correct?
Correct. That's what the people of Flint have been seeing for the last several months, and it's just utterly ridiculous. It's what the city, I forget the city, what the state has done. It's just criminal.
But it's only affecting one area. It's not affecting the whole state of Michigan. So when you look at this, and hopefully people can see it, when you look at this, the water is actually dirtier than this, correct?
It is, yeah, absolutely. You'll see lead contamination, so lead particles in the water. You might see some metal coming out of your faucet. What we're seeing today, especially with Flint, is a failure on all the politicians. So you had the mayor of Flint, you had the city council of Flint, you had the EPA, the Michigan EPA, then you had the federal EPA, you had the governor's office, you had so many different levels, local, state, federal. They all failed the people of Flint. All of them failed. You had pediatricians complaining to the state, saying that they were seeing higher levels of lead in children. You had General Motors complaining about the water in Flint rusting their car parts, and they had to change their water supply. I mean, when GM says your water is rusting our car parts, that is a sign saying something's wrong with our water here in Flint. But all the people, they were all kind of just overlooked. Nobody was, until it became a national issue, and all of a sudden they are trying to correct all the wrongs. And right now they're just, I'm sure, just like with anything else, they're trying to make sure that their butts are covered and that they don't end up going to jail over this.
In essence, you're saying that's a good example. They didn't have a disaster plan.
Well, that's a good example of politicians being stupid. You know, when you have, again, you have so many people complaining. When you have GM, General Motors, complaining that your water is rusting their car parts. Think about that for a second. It's rusting aluminum and steel. Your water is rusting aluminum and steel. Think of what it does to a person's body. Okay? Think about all the kids. 9,000 kids now have brain damage. They have long-term health issues. You have thousands of people in that city now that have major issues, health issues too. And then on top of that, think about it. They cannot move. They are stuck in limbo. They cannot sell their house. Think nobody in their right mind would be going to Flint right now trying to buy a home in Flint. It's like 3 Mile Island or Chernobyl. Nobody is going to go. Nobody's going to come. And the people that are stuck. Now, my advice to them, to those people right now, is get out of Dodge. Get out of there. Even if it's economically harmful, if you are going to lose money, you should leave. Because you being there right now, it's going to damage you long term in health. There are so many kids right now. I mean, water is a precious commodity. It's more valuable than oil, anything in the world. Water is the most precious commodity. It's 80% of our body is made out of water. We need water every single day. And the people over there, they can't even drink water coming out of the faucets. They have to resort to bottled. For a family of 4, that's $1,700 a week they have to spend on bottled water. For most middle class people, for most people, majority of people, they cannot spend that much money just on water alone. So they need to get out.
If elected, you are faced with a similar situation like in Flint, Michigan, here in Chicago. What are your first steps in solving the problem?
If Flint happened here, if we decided to change our water supply from the lake to, let's say, the Chicago River, and that water corroded a lot of our piping, the first thing I do is we got to let the people know. We have to inform the people to let them know that the water is unsafe and that they should immediately stop drinking that water, bathing in that water, using that water for anything else. Number 2, then we got to come up with a plan. Now, I'm not in office right now, so I don't know what the current state of our infrastructure is. I just know it's horrible. The American Society of Civil Engineers graded our infrastructure here in Cook County and the city of Chicago as a D-. A D-. That's just one iota above failure, F. So I know we're in bad shape right now. We're in horrible shape. So, but to find out exactly where those areas that we need to start investing in and getting the money to do that, I mean, we're talking about cooperation on several different levels of government. I know right now, Flint in Michigan, they've been trying to get federal appropriations, money from the federal government to help alleviate and to modernize their infrastructure, to rip out all that old lead piping. They're not able to do so. Even with national attention as we see it today, they have not been able to pass a bill in Congress to help Flint, Michigan, which is a damn shame. So if it happens here in Chicago, we're going to have the same problems. It's a matter of, can we allocate funding to fix those old piping infrastructure that we have here in Chicago, here in Cook County?
Would you call for a state of emergency in that area to bring water, fire trucks, and even sending some people to colleges and universities to take showers or get fresh water? State University, they have several universities and colleges. Why Flint? Why the governor? And I see this all the time talking to others. It's kind of like the what if game.
Yeah.
Okay, why not call a state of emergency and get the state troopers out so they can have trucks of water supply? so they can schedule people to take showers, can alleviate some of the problems until the problem is fixed. Go to universities, they have campuses out
They
there.
have dormitories.
They have dormitories that's
Right.
not being utilized. Why they're not, why politicians just sitting there? You have the Black Caucus that's there.
Yeah.
You have several entities that's there that's not being fully utilized. So my question is, again, would you call a state of emergency if this Chicago water looks like this?
Absolutely. I would call a state of emergency. I would call a federal emergency. I would ask for federal aid. And you hit it right on the head. If we have this type of issue here in Chicago, I mean, we'd have to find a way to move people out of certain areas and put them in places where they can actually function. I mean, Flint is a good example. It's ideal example almost. It's a small enough town where you can actually move people out of that town. And I'm saying people should get out of that town immediately because there is no purpose for them to stay there anymore. They are getting poisoned left and right from the water, from just the old, that town is a very old town. So they have not only lead paint in some places, but they have lead everything. They have asbestos. It's horrible. So I would say for the best thing for them is to get out of town, and have the state of Michigan help them out. You got to put them into universities where there's dormitories, where there's ample supply of water and housing and food. Or there's Michigan is such a big state, you can relocate a lot of these people in different various areas of the state. Same as here in Illinois. Chicago, if it happened here in Chicago, I mean, we're talking about a massive scale now. We'd have to possibly shift over 10 million people. And it wouldn't be just for all over Chicago, but certain areas of Chicago, most notably probably the west side and the south side, because the infrastructure in those areas is extremely poor and it's extremely old. Like I said, those areas were put in around the same time as the infrastructure in Flint. So you have a lot of old lead, a lot of old brick, a lot of old wood, and a lot of old clay piping. I mean, if you can think about this for a second, wood piping. There's wood piping underground. I mean, they hollowed out a log, and that was pipe for a lot of homes. It's still out here in the west side and the south side of Chicago.
Haven't been fixed at all.
Hasn't been fixed at all.
Knowing the problems people are facing in Flint, Michigan, some residents are still having to pay their water bills. If the same problem occurs again in Chicago, would you continue to charge people if water looks like this?
No, that is insanity. Why would you charge people?
They're still paying bills.
I know. It's just crazy. Why would you charge people for poison water? That makes absolutely zero sense whatsoever. Why would you charge people for poison? And you are the government. It's a government agency. It's a government entity charging people, their citizens, for bad water, for poison water. It's ridiculous. It is utterly ridiculous. Again, we have, it just goes to the notion of we really have blind leaders who do not understand or do not comprehend what exactly is going on. They have no common sense. That's the biggest problem.
If I'm a homeowner, what are the warning signs my water supply is contaminated?
Well, for most people, they won't know unless you have those things that you can just tell from either tasting your water if it tastes different than what it's supposed to, what you're used to, if there's a smell, and of course the major one, if there's a different color. If orange water is coming out of your faucet, don't drink it.
Well, I have an argument with that because there are some people who stay in apartment complexes and condos.
Mm-hmm.
Their water supply looks dirty, then it turns clean. Should you be concerned about that?
Well, if they're living in an apartment complex or a condominium or any of those areas, most likely what occurred, and again, this only happens once, I hope, is probably the water supply was shut off, so they could probably fix a boiler or they could fix a chiller or something. something mechanical. Now, if this happens every single day, then we got a problem. Then we got a problem. Because
But how can you notice the difference? Because if you're worried about Flint,
yeah,
you turn on a water faucet, it looks like this, then it turns into this.
hmm
Is it safe to drink after it was at first it's like this? And
well, if that's Roman, if that's going on every single day, yeah, I would be worried because that should not be happening every single day. That should only be happening once. If like once in a while, when I say once in a while, I mean it's because the building has either replaced a mechanical system or mechanical pipe or something where they had to shut the water off, fix something out, and then let the water back in. Now, when the system or whatever is left piping, now if it's turning orange and then going clear every single day, then you got a problem, a massive problem. That should be definitely looked at.
you mentioned filters. However, filters are very expensive. Disadvantaged consumers, how they get a hold of it for their homes
hmm
or apartments to protect themselves from lead. As water commissioner, are you willing to make water filters available for low income people?
Absolutely. It's a matter of working with the manufacturers at that point. So it's on a massive scale, just like going to Costco or a Walmart. If you can order thousands and thousands of these water filters, the price of it drops dramatically. And if you're able to work with, let's say, a government agency like myself, we can provide a subsidy so that you can make it affordable for people that have, low income or middle income who normally wouldn't afford a filter. I would be more than happy to work with the citizens of Cook County and Chicago on that.
If there are potential problems in the Chicago water system in certain areas, you have to think about if there are potential contaminated water that we haven't discussed yet, such as the schools
Yeah.
and park districts. As commissioner, what is your plan to solve it? Because you're saying majority of the area, clay piping, wood piping, metal piping. So of course that's going to affect schools.
Yep.
That's going to affect park district. They have water fountains that children drink out of
Yeah.
on a consistent basis.
Yep.
How you plan on solving it?
Well, it's a matter of just replacing it, modernizing it, taking it out of the ground. I know when I was a kid growing up, and you were in a park district, Chicago Park District area playground, the water tastes a little funky. Well, it's because a lot of the water that was going through that water fountain is made out of wood. It was wood piping underneath. Now, what the city has done in some areas is they've replaced that piping and put in brand new ductile iron piping or put in brand new HDP piping, modern materials. But in some cases, they haven't. It depends on where you live. In the north, they've spent the money. In the south and the west, they have not. And it goes back to leaders. It goes back to who your local leaders are. Who are your politicians? Who's your alderman? Who's your state representative? Who's your state senator? Are they doing their job? In most cases, they're not. I've been down to Springfield numerous times, and I've seen our elected officials. They're just there to pick up a check, everything they're voting for. But they're not there fighting for us. They're not there trying to make sure that our lives are better than it was yesterday. They're not doing that. And it's a matter of electing the right kinds of people who are going to take this very seriously. Serious times call for serious people. So it's a matter of having somebody that's out there fighting for you, making sure that our infrastructure is modernized, creating jobs, and cleaning our water supply.
As water commissioner,
Yeah.
would you call for a heavy inspection in these school systems to see if the water is?
Yeah. Bingo. I mean, you don't know what you have until you actually look at it. And I would inspect every school, I would inspect every park, I would inspect every area, public area, and make sure that what we have down there as far as infrastructure is up to snuff and up to par, and it's modern. There's no point placing two-year-old piping that's made out of steel, but it makes sense for us to replace the 100-year-old wood piping that's underneath the school or a playground. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, again, 100-year, more than some of these pipings are well over 100 years old. It needs to be replaced. Should have been replaced 30, 40 years ago. But, again, it goes back to, out of sight, out of mind. And what is the priority of your elected official? What do they care about? Are they just running just so they can get elected again and collect a paycheck, a pension, and then call retirement? Or are they actually out there fighting for you, the taxpayer, you, the citizen, and making sure that money is being used to invest and modernize our infrastructure, create jobs, and make sure that our water is pristine?
You're talking about old houses, homes, apartment buildings. What about historical churches, old churches? Again, what should they do to get clean water? It's hard for a historic church because, that's not really a public place. It's a place to worship.
Right.
As water commissioner, how would you hold churches to make sure they get clean water facility?
Well, again, it's going back to utilizing and creating an effort to combine all these resources. So historical churches, there's not just one historical church. There are many historical churches all over Chicagoland area. And it's getting them all in a meeting, in a group, and asking them, well, what can you afford? And what can we do to help your church and make sure that we can modernize your church? Now, there's a separation between church and state, but there's nothing in it where we can't actually help these churches make sure that their piping is clean, number one, and number two, they have the best modernized infrastructure available. When it comes to the filters, again, it goes back to the masses. If we're able to provide and subsidize a lot of these filters, these churches should also take advantage of that as well.
A lot of people drink bottled water nowadays. However, bottled water are coming from the same water system. Should we trust bottled water, or should we have some concerns in drinking the bottled water? Because some people say it's no different than a faucet water. So the bottle right there to your right there, let's say it's no different from this water.
Mm-hmm.
So the water system, which you're saying, comes out of the metal, the clay, and the wood piping is in this bottle right here.
Bingo.
And some water plants are coming from Flint, Michigan. Are coming from Michigan. I'm sorry, not Flint, but coming from Michigan as well.
Yeah.
Should we trust the bottled water?
Well, listen, it's a little bit of yes and no. So the water coming out, I'll give you an example. When I was in school, I went to class with a gentleman who was coming from Africa, and his father what their operations look like. It's 3 guys in a little shack with a hose, pouring water into a water bottle and then capping it off. It's no different here. The water that's in this bottle, is the same water that's coming out of the tap. And there's no difference. Now, what some of these companies will try to do is they'll try to take it a step further and filter the water as it's coming out of the tap to make it a little more cleaner. Because depending on where they are, they could be using water from a well, which will have more mineral content, or it could be coming out of a stream, or it could be coming out of a lake. It all depends. So it's a yes or no question, depending on who the company is and what they're exactly doing and where the water source is coming from. It could be exactly the same as the water coming out of your tap, or it could just be a little different. It all depends. Bottled water is probably the biggest misconception in most people's minds. It's
Because they think it's
they
safer
think it's
than
safer.
tap.
Yeah, bingo. They trust a Ice Mountain, which is a Nestle company, or they trust a Dasani water, which is Coca-Cola, or Aquafina, which is Pepsi. A lot of these companies are the same companies that are making your soft drinks as well. So, but for them, this costs them a penny, but they're charging us $1.15 for bottled water. So it is for them just preying on people's misconceptions, and it goes back to informing and educating our consumers as to what exactly they're purchasing.
It goes back to what happened several years ago. It was a water bottle tax. In Chicago, the suburbs does not. As commissioner, would you advise? You said you will work with politicians. A lot of people are pretty ticked off about the water bottle tax.
Mm-hmm.
Can you reduce it? Can you
Yeah,
kind of
unfortunately,
like wipe it away? What can you do? Because a lot of people are going to the suburbs and buying bottled water.
sure. Unfortunately, I can't really do much with that because that's a city council.
But can you persuade an alderman to write the bill for you or the ordinance for you to reintroduce it to
I
see
can
where it
I can
goes?
definitely try, and I can definitely persuade, and I can definitely lobby, but it would be tough. It'd be like trying to reverse the whole red light camera situation. It's extremely tough because it's already there. It's a matter of reversing it. Now, I think the red lights are horrible. It's a horrible system, but the city of Chicago makes so much money off of it, just like they're making so much money off of the water bottle tax. It would be very difficult for them to reverse it now, especially when they're in dire straits. My Polish friends like to say the city of Chicago is in deep shit ski. They're in horrible shape, financially speaking.
I thought I was going to have a clean show today. We're running out of time. Summer is coming up. There will be a lot of job opportunities in the water department. Unfortunately, those job opportunities are being passed over and enacted.
Mhm.
As commissioner, how can you assure African Americans they will get their fair share of those jobs?
Well, I'll make sure that they apply, and at the same time too.
Using what measures, though?
Well, at the end of the day, they have to. Everybody has to apply through a system, and I will do my best to make sure that the people that are African American, and again, this is representative of the areas. Chicago County is quite large, and the African American population make up a good chunk of it. So the best I could do is make sure that a large part of our internship program, even summer job program, that we do see a lot of African American applicants get those jobs. I think it should be fair.
Instead of and sorry to interrupt, instead of the aldermen
Yeah.
getting
Aldermen's
their
kids. Yeah.
grandsons or whatever
Right.
to the jobs, it has been a real big problem. So how would you get that message out there to the people? Would you go through churches? Would you go through, not everybody is connected to social media.
Right. Well, that's one thing I'll do is, as commissioner, I will be visiting every church. I mean, I go to Apostolic Church of God, so they'll probably be the first church that hears about the program. But I'll be making stops to Trinity. I'll be making stops to other churches in the south side and the west side of Chicago, and letting people know that there are opportunities at the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District that let's go back to the summer now. This summer is going to have a whole host of issues, especially with the Zika virus. The Zika virus is transmitted through mosquitoes, and those mosquitoes will be propagating in our sewers on the west side and the south side. Because when it comes to fumigation, and mosquito abatement, those areas are poor in resources and do not have, again, this goes back to leaders now, politicians, do not have the types of politicians where they're actually going to be working to make sure that fumigation is being handled correctly. North side is fine. Those politicians will make sure that those areas get fumigated. But the west side and the south side are a major concern of mine. Now, those areas are going to have, that's where I'm going to be creating the jobs, is the summer, during the summer program, is making sure that there are people fumigating those sooner that the Zika come here to Chicago and propagate like it has in Brazil and some of these other countries.
Again, we're running out of time. If someone is listening to intellectualradio.com/iHeartRadio station on the fence between you and another candidate, how can you convince them to vote for you in tomorrow's primary?
Well, my name is Andrew Seo, punch number 141. I'm running for the 2-year term at the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District. My goal is to modernize our infrastructure, create jobs, stop flooding, and to make sure that our water is pristine. Now, if you're for all those things, I would definitely appreciate your vote. I do as I say, and I will get it done.
Your punch number?
Punch number 141, Andrew Seo, S-E-O.
Why I call you so?
Oh, I don't know.
Well, thanks to Andrew Seo. Please don't be a stranger on the Drive at 5.
Absolutely.
We'd like you to come and talk about the water and stuff like that. It's a big issue in the African American community. Thanks for the drive. I really appreciate that.
Thank you, Roman.
And that's going to do it for us this week on the Drive at 5. Thanks to Earl Winfrey, Real Ray, who is up next with Straight No Chasers. You guys have a good week.